How's your day been, Eddie?
Well, pretty good. It's been like busy but good. I don't know, Christmas vibes here, bull market vibes here. Everything goes up. So quite positive, I would say.
Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
especially with Starknet, with all the stuff that's happening on Starknet, I bet it's an
Well,
exciting time.
yeah, I would say it's a bullish time, so it's good, it's good, yeah. I would
Cool.
say like ZK is finally maturing, to proper production. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exciting for sure. I think we have a few people already joined in, and not, this space is also recorded, so I think we can begin. So thank you guys for all joining our Twitter Spaces today, where we're going to be talking about borrowing LUSD on Starknet, essentially being able to mint LUSD on a different chain compared to Ethereum mainnet. Having been at Liquity for a year and a half now, I feel like it's one of the most common requests we always get. And although we had a brief stint with Aztec in the past, we're finally in a position now where there's actually a place where you can actually mint LUSD and do various different things. So my name is Sam, and I lead growth at Liquity. Today I have my colleague Bojan, who is the head of operations at Liquity, joining me as well. And we've also got Eddie from Space Shard and Nimbora, who helped build the integration, who has joined us to explain a little bit more about what the integration entails here as well. So thanks for joining, guys.
Thanks for
Um,
having me.
really, really glad to have you both here. So I guess what we can kick off with is pretty much Eddie, if you could give a little bit of a rundown as to how Nimbora works, and yeah, just let the audience know really what you guys provide.
Absolutely. Like maybe let's start with the problem. So why did we build this and why did we collaborate basically between Nimbora and Liquity? So as you said, like there are a couple of limitations on mainnet. If you want to borrow LUSD from a throw, you have to open it. You have to have approximate like $2,000 or so, and then the gas fees and so on. It's not really, friendly to let's say like the common folk. And then like we have like Ethereum mainnet, which is kind of like, getting more congested and so on by the day because of the upcoming bull market. But we have also these L2s, which are kind of like are promising to scale it. As you said, Aztec was like the earliest examples of that, and like their kind of thing they wanted to do. Unfortunately, they shut it down for multiple reasons. But now, kind of finally, it feels like ZK is ready. As when we compare like ZK rollups to like optimistic rollups, like kind of most of the traction is still on optimistic ones, but still the trust assumptions to bridging to optimistic rollup and again bridging back to mainnet are kind of, you need a week to wait to bridge some assets back to mainnet. Let's say LUSD have on like arbitrary more optimism. Well, that's not the best user experience. But with the ZK kind of rollups, the whole idea is you can do this much faster because the underlying math and underlying proofs that these ZK rollups depend on and basically they derive security from mainnet. And you can go from like some of those ZK rollups in 6 to 8 hours to mainnet. So that's kind of the first thing. And then when we were thinking about it, okay, how can we scale this L1 DeFi that's fully trustless, permissionless, and so on to these L2s, in this case Starknet, because we believe it's the most mature at this point. So how can we do that? Well, obviously, okay, we have a throw. We can open a communal throw on mainnet where multiple users can join, and then we need to have some kind of vault on there too. In this case, Starknet, when users can join together their kind of deposits. So let's say in this case, basically, I have I don't know 0.2 ETH, where I have zero point 0.1, and you Sam are like a whale, so you have like 0.7. So altogether we have one ETH, and then we want to borrow basically with one ETH from this throw on mainnet. How do we do that? Well, we have two options. So we have basically two different throws that we pre-opened on mainnet. One is 370% like over collateralized, another one is like around 500%, which means that we can choose from two options. One option which is like safer, but you have a higher collateral ratio. Another which is basically a bit less safe, but still safe enough so we can borrow against it. And then we decide, okay, where we to join. And then what happens in the background is we have a batch system that executes all the user deposits on layer 2. So basically this seed, it bridges it back to L1, deposits into throw, basically borrows LUSD against that, bridges that LUSD back to L2, in this case Starknet, and distributes to the users, like in this case Real. So that's kind of the intro on that side. And then the whole idea of Nimbora is basically to scale this L1 DeFi to L2s.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the great benefits for users really is that, on mainnet, one of the limitations of Liquidity is that you obviously need to have a minimum loan of at least $2,000. On Nimbora, or on Starknet, since you already have two troves that are already set for you, you don't really have a minimum. You can even borrow $100, $200, $300, whatever it is. You also pay 3 to 10x, is it? Less gas fees.
Even more
Would
in
you
the
say that?
future? Yeah, even
Even,
more in the
yeah,
future. Yeah. I mean, it depends on
yeah.
the number of users. So like let's say like you pay like $30 or $40 a mainnet and there are like three of us in a batch, well, we'll pay like one third of that. If there's 10 users in a batch,
Hmm.
we'll pay each one tenth of that and so on. If there are users, well, the fees become negligible. So that's why basically, we are slowly moving towards that.
Exactly, yeah, and I think that's a very good point. And because of the lower gas cost on layer two as well, if you need to adjust your loan, you can also manage it a little bit better compared to mainnet, where I would say like every transaction costs $40, $50, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
Um, I think what is also great is obviously now with Starknet, the ecosystem, you see that it's growing. There's various dexes and money markets around as well. And Boyan, maybe you can talk a little bit more about, the use cases that LUSD will offer on Starknet.
Yeah, sure, have to do that. Um, I did spend quite some time on Starknet personally, so playing around with the ecosystem and seeing what's happening, what's being developed. What's especially interesting for me in regards to the projects building on Starknet is that they've been around so long, some of them 2 years or 2 years plus, without Starknet really being live or functional, so to say. So just now things are starting to pick up. In a few months, presumably, we will have the Stark token, and then really things will take off, in my opinion. And the projects which are live now or live since already months are going to benefit the most from them. And what you can do with Liquity or with LUSD right now is we are integrated into the three main dexes. So you can LP on Ecubo, on Jedi Swap, and on MySwap. And we are also going to be integrated into ZK Lend, which is the biggest money market on Starknet. And I think those four really are the OGs of the ecosystem. And if you have any intentions to get an airdrop, I would recommend interacting with them. So bridging some ETH over, taking out a loan, and then playing around with LUSD, swapping, LPing, minting, etc., etc. Or that is at least what I'm doing. And with a new ecosystem, especially with one which is that promising, I would want some exposure there.
That's very well said. And for guys who are in the spaces, I've just shared a small thread that Boyan did in a couple of days back, just highlighting the different avenues where you can use your LUSD and where LUSD is going to be integrated in the coming weeks and months as well. We will also be coming out with a blog post very shortly in the next hour or so, which showcases a step-by-step guide as to how you can borrow on Starknet and also use LUSD across various places on Starknet. I do want to turn my attention back to now the technical implementation of Liquity on Starknet, Eddie, and talk a little bit more about transactions and batching and how it works. So let's say I do want to. I jump into one of the troves that you have on Starknet, and I want my LUSD right here and right now because I want to go ape into the next meme coin that is on Starknet. Is that possible currently with the integration you have built, or do you still have to wait for a batch for people to kind of come into a batch?
So, okay, I'll have to share also the alpha here now. So when we are talking about that, so like there are like two modes basically now. Like you have normal mode where you just join as a part of a batch and you wait for the batch to fill. When the batch gets filled, basically then it's kind of executed and get withdrawn to mainnet. Still, that takes 6 to 8 hours. So theoretically, you can wait for a longer time, but you maybe sometimes don't want to that, or you want to open something like meme coin, or you want to repay your debt because I don't know, the ETH price has been dropping steadily. Well, there will be turbo mode still. We're planning basically to release it in January, which basically uses the fast withdrawal bridge under the hood, which means basically you can get to mainnet and back in around 10 to 15 minutes. So this kind of almost makes this transition from Starknet to mainnet and back seem like another shard and not just some ZK stuff that takes 6 to 8 hours and so on. The main kind of difference between like the turbo mode and fast mode is obviously the kind of fast mode you can just pay the fees to fill the batch. With the turbo mode, you pay the fees for fast withdrawal to mainnet and so on. So depending how urgent it is for you, well, you can kind of execute it faster, and then you pay the batch, like you pay the gas cost for also the remaining part of the batch. So it's kind of still communal in that sense. So the more the users, the cheaper it gets. And then the last person who joins, they want to execute this immediately. Well, they just pay the remainder of the gas and decide which one to use. So it's quite flexible in that terms. But yeah, we believe that this was one of the main feedbacks. Oh, we have to wait for 6 to 8 hours. I want to get it fast, and so on. So that's basically one of the things we are going to launch in January. We'll have basically this in the alpha testing group also, so you will get first access to there, so you can test this even before others do, so that we can make this transition from L1 to L2 as seamless as possible. But yeah, to basically to just go through interactions once again. So what we have on L2 is the normal vault system that you use on mainnet, just written in Cairo, so the same standard. And then basically what technically happens in the background, like users deposit the amount of ETH they want into that ETH gets aggregated as one, basically that aggregation as a batch gets bridged to L1. So like the ETH from all the batch, then basically that ETH through smart contracts obviously interacts with the throw that's already pre-deployed on mainnet. And we have two routes. One is basically the route for like one throw, the other route is completely the route for the second throw, so that completely detached one from the other. And then obviously when we borrow or repay, depending on what there is a majority of, then we bridge the difference back. The key point here is, let's say we at one point have more borrowing and there are some repayments. Well, we just settle that and just do the difference. So let's say we users wanted to borrow $1,000 or $10,000 and they want to repay $1,000. Well, we'll just execute the difference, which in this case is now $1,000. This basically is on the same batch. And then if it goes the other way around, it also does the other way around. So that's kind of the current modes. But yeah, you have a normal one, which basically just join the batch, then wait for it to fill, and then basically it gets executed. You have a fast, which you can just execute, close basically now the fulfillment of the batch, and then basically it gets executed on mainnet in 6 to 8 hours. And turbo in the future, which on top of that will be having a fast withdrawal mechanism to mainnet, so we'll be able to withdraw it at 15 minutes, obviously for a fee, but yeah, it depends on what you need. So that's kind of the wrap up around that.
Oh, that's super exciting. I think being able to provide users with the flexibility is awesome, and it's always good to have different options for different use cases, right? One question I think we've gotten on our Discord and on Telegram as well is what wallets you can use with Starknet. Edi, maybe you can give the technical explanation as to why Bravos and Argent are being used instead of MetaMask, but I can also let the users or the audience here know that you do have to use one of those two wallets or currently to interact with Starknet. But they do the bridge from Ethereum mainnet to Starknet. The Starkgate bridge is actually very user friendly, where you just have to connect either MetaMask, Rainbow, Rabi, whatever you have, with either one of the Argent and Bravos wallet. But Eddie, maybe you can help explain on a technical level why that's needed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So like the Cairo VM is completely different than basically Ethereum VM. So like with Ethereum you have like with EVM basically you have Solidity that gets compiled to this bytecode that gets deployed to this Ethereum virtual machine, which works on its own way, and then you have a Cairo virtual machine which is working differently. You have a Cairo language and special virtual machine. Why Starknet has done that is because ZK is quite kind of hard to do, around the EVM because they're like, like hashing functions and those kind of things are really expensive to prove and so on. And then what they did is kind of said, okay, if we want to build the virtual machine for the next billion users for the mass market and so on, well, we can be EVM compatible. There are obviously other solutions on the market, ZK VMs and so on, trying to do this. So I wouldn't be too opinionated on that. I think this is a good approach, and it has its downsides. But the good side of this is that you can build stuff from scratch. You can build it from all the learnings that we have from EVM. What can be done better. You can build it from the day one in here, which is you have native account abstraction which means that user doesn't need to manage the keys that they kind of figured out like that they had. Like when you have EOA, you have a pseudo key that controls everything and so on, which is not the best because we've seen with recent ledger hacks and stuff what happens when you have an EOA which doesn't have a two-factor authentication or so. You just basically get drained. So EOA is a kind of tricky on that front. And with account abstraction, it's basically abstracted. So you can kind of set rules. It's a smart account, basically a smart contract that controls how your account behaves. And you can kind of like log in even with email, stuff like that. So that's on account abstraction kind of side. And then obviously because MetaMask is not account abstraction wallet per se, or Rabi, or any of those Ethereum ones, like the only account abstraction on Ethereum you have is behind the EOA. So you usually have this external owned account that kind of is a private key for creating an account abstraction wallet or something, which is kind of like still you have EOA as a first class citizen, while on Starknet it's kind of the other way around. You don't have EOA support, but actually you have account abstraction support, and that's kind of natively built into the protocol. And then you have to build new wallets, which in this case is Argent, like build their Argent tags, Bravos build their like Bravos wallet and so on, which have like multiple different options you don't have on mainnet, like 2FA, 3FA, and so on authentication. And on top of that, you have MetaMask snaps now. But I also know there's some stuff being worked on that you can prove basically Ethereum signatures directly on Starknet because ECDCA basically signatures can be supported on Starknet and can be verified. So maybe in the future we'll have also support for MetaMask and similar Rabi and so on, like basically support on Starknet, so you can sign transactions as you used to using your favorite wallet and executing on Starknet, but that will come in some time in the future. So yeah. So basically, that's kind of like on that front. I generally believe that if we want kind of to scale the ZK paradigm and everything to the new heights and levels, well, we have to change. We can't rely on EVM because EVM is amazing. It was amazing for its time, basically. I worked in EF back in the day in 2017, 18, and so on, and EF was, like really good back then. But we as a space have evolved a lot in new paradigms and new ways of thinking, like we need to be implemented to scale kind of this space forward. So yeah, hopefully that explains why basically we have these new wallets and we don't have MetaMask or Rabi support and so on.
No, yeah, it very clearly does. Thanks for that. Boyan, you mentioned earlier that the projects that have integrated LUSD, but could you maybe even shed some light as to how you personally are using those projects, and share some strategies maybe with the audience as to what they could potentially do?
Yeah, happy to do that. Small comment on the wallets. So if you're coming from MetaMask and going now to either Argent or Bravos, the improvement will be quite noticeable. So you can rest assured that everything will work as intended and will be pleasant to use. So that's good. How I use LUSD, I mean, it's not a big philosophy or some elaborate strategy. I'm mostly LPing on all three DEXs. As I mentioned, that's Ecubo, MySwap, and JellySwap. I'm LPing on all of those. I am swapping things around. I'm also using Avenue, AVNU, which is a very good aggregator on Starknet, pretty advanced. So I'm just trying to use the ecosystem to, on one side, to get to know it, to see how the projects work, and on the other side, also to qualify for the airdrop, be it Starknet itself or the project. And that's just how most of the people use it right now, because until the Stark token launches, this is the same with every L2. Until the token launches, people are just positioning themselves for once this happens, because then we will have project tokens and incentives and airdrops and all of that. The big difference here, and what I like a lot about Starknet, is that all of those projects are new. Those are people who are believers in the technology, like Edi. Those are people who had to teach themselves a new programming language, Cairo, and so they are quite devoted and dedicated to this cause. And all of those projects do not have any EVM or Ethereum exposure yet. They have no tokens. Everything is new, which is a big difference to pretty much all other L2s, where we have the makers and the curves and I don't know what, beefy swaps everywhere. This is not the case for Starknet, and you can really experience and see a new ecosystem, a new L2 grow, pretty much. So that's what I like a lot.
Yeah, I would just add to that, like, Cairo, as a language is a feature and a bug, because once you go in, well, you can't really easily just switch and deploy on the chain, which means, like, okay, these devs are there, they can't leave for the better or worse, but that means basically they will be focused on this and only this chain, because, like, as you mentioned, like with Aave, with Maker, and some others, well, they just deploy a new chain and then they incentivize liquidity, like your token gets spread, like Sushi, for example, also. And then it slowly deteriorates over time because incentivized liquidity on these new chains is expensive, and this kind of liquidity is mercenary, so it just moves from one chain to the other and so on. And with the Cairo projects, well, like that tokens won't get spread all over because they can only work on Starknet, and that's kind of a feature of it.
No, exactly. And I can echo the thoughts of Boyan about like the technology, the tech within some of these dexes it's actually super cool. Like Ecobo, the concentrated liquidity that it provides, along with the swap rates of Avenue using it as a DEX aggregator. It's actually pretty impressive what the Starknet team and the ecosystem there have built. So definitely recommend the audience here to check some of these protocols out. So just to kind of recap again, like, the main benefits on Starknet for someone who wants to open a liquidity trove, you would benefit from a lot lower gas fees. We're talking cents rather than $40, $50 on mainnet. You can borrow up to $1,000 at the minute. And Edi, correct me if I'm wrong, the plan is right now we're still in the beta phase, that we do plan to increase this limit in the coming months. On top of that, you can also participate in a different ecosystem that is the Starknet ecosystem, where any mistakes or anything, or gas costs wise, won't cost you that much. And you also have two options to choose from. One is a collateral ratio that is a little bit more degen, I would say, and one is a little bit safer. Overall, they're both quite safe. Well, I think one is at 350% collateral ratio, and one is at 550%. But they're pretty safe on both fronts. And yeah, I think that's kind of like the main benefits. One thing though that is also quite cool with the Starknet integration is that you can also actually bridge your LUSD if you would like to pay off your debt or whatever, or if you want to add more LUSD on top of what you've already borrowed on Starknet, you can also bridge your LUSD from Ethereum mainnet onto Starknet. So that is a kind of a cool feature. And that's definitely doable through the Starknet bridge as well. I guess
Just
one
to
of
add to
the
that
yeah, go ahead.
briefly, one difference compared to Liquity is also that you can actually have two troves open at the same time. In Liquity with one wallet, that's not possible, but here, because you have two collateral ratios to choose from, you can have two open. Or if you play around with Argent and with Bravos, with both wallets, which I advise you to do, then you can have four troves open, which is pretty cool. And then in total, I think you can borrow like 3,500 LUSD, which is already a decent amount. But as Edi said, we will increase, or they will increase that in due time. So yeah,
Absolutely.
just want to add.
Yeah, like obviously, like we're increasing it slowly, so because like this is a new technology, starting also changes under the hood, there are updates to the protocol itself and so on. So we don't want to risk like too much user deposits, but it's like behaving really robustly lately and so on. So that's why we are slowly increasing the kind of like limitations on how much you can borrow. So that will also definitely get increased. So yeah. But like as Sam said, like as there is more demand and basically like more integrations on Starknet itself, more into DEX's money market and so on, there is more demand for LUSD. And I believe like long term, LUSD can be one of the main stable coins, if not the main one on Starknet, because we've seen recently that actually LUSD managed to, like repeg $2 without any incentives, which is really, really like amazing for this space, and it proves basically its resilience and maturity as a product. And then when you compare that to USDC and USDT, which is blocking people right, like all around for like getting on this list, well, who do you trust, the centralized protocol or centralized like stablecoin issuers? Like that's probably something that everybody should ask themselves. So yeah.
Very well said. So I've also on the spaces now just attached a detailed blog post that we have written, which shows like a step-by-step guide as to how you can bridge onto Starknet, what wallets to use, and what you can do with your LUSD on Starknet. So definitely check it out as well. So before we open it up to questions, there is a special campaign that is happening, and for Christmas because it is the holidays.
Ho, ho, ho.
So exactly. So Santa Eddie, maybe you can just share the alpha with the community as to what this campaign entails.
Absolutely. I'm not the best, maybe, like Santa, but yeah, like we'll do our best. So the whole idea basically is, as I mentioned kind of previously, is the can we bring like Liquity to L2 to Starknet without exposing users to all this volatility on mainnet, to all gas fees and so on. And that's why basically we decided to give this user experience to the users at this stage. So they can basically only pay the L2 gas fees. They don't care about L1 gas fees. That's on us. We basically celebrate the Christmas together by that, by giving you basically free transactions on mainnet. And then in the future, with the second version of like Liquity and so on, maybe when it becomes, yield bearing and so on, we'll see. Maybe some alpha you can also share. Basically, it can be also self-sustaining on that terms. So you don't have to care about L1 gas fees. It's completely basically, self-sustaining and basically we'll pay it for next 2 weeks, starting on Monday. And then later on, like obviously we'll do some other stuff and get this going. But the whole idea is users can borrow now and repay from Starknet without getting any exposure to L1 gas fees, which means they can use this natively on Starknet without any volatility. So that's I think what we need to reach kind of mass markets and like users with smaller deposits who don't want to basically pay huge amounts of sum but still want to participate in these kind of things. That's how we scale DeFi from L1 to L2. And ho ho ho.
Exactly. And the main benefit that comes from this to a user is for the next 2 weeks, starting from Monday, pretty much borrowing on Starknet will be under 50 cents or so for any transaction, which is
Exactly. I think yeah. Yeah.
ideal.
That,
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think what we'll do now, unless either of you have any questions or points, is maybe just open it up to our audience. If you would like to ask a question to us, please just raise your request to speak. Sorry, and I'll bring you up to the stage, and you can ask us questions. Cool, Marco. I have just approved you to be a speaker. So yeah, please unmute yourself, and you can ask your question.
Hey guys, thanks for the space. I just was curious, maybe I missed it, I joined just a few minutes too late, but if how the plans on Starknet relate to the V2 that's coming out next year.
I mean, obviously, like when that happens, we'll definitely support it on Starknet. Like for now, V2 is not out, so like that's basically not implemented. But like we believe, like what Liquity is building, at least alpha I got, like publicly, that's going to be huge. Like especially the new changes and so on. At least speculation that is out. But yeah, I will let Bojan basically speak on that behalf, or in Sam, what you can share.
Yeah, can't say too much in terms of Starknet or L2 strategies in general. We are trying to have a good footprint with LUSD. We do have LUSD on several L2s already and expanding that additionally. And that would help the new stablecoin also once it launches because we can easier provide liquidity setup pools, have integrations and connections already set up. So everything will work much faster and much smoother than with LUSD or with version 1.
And yeah, obviously on the L2 side, we'll definitely support that and efforts happen up front because, I believe those kind of changes that, Liquidity is going towards like are really revolutionary and, will benefit the space a lot, especially L2s.
And also one thing I just want to add as well, by that time, it'll be interesting to see what technical innovations are for bridging and batching between layer 2s and layer 1s. Like there's so much development being done on intents and whatnot as well. And I think that will also play a role as to, and also the CCIP stuff that Chainlink are working on, and all these things will also be interesting to see and maybe shape how the layer 2 landscape looks like. Cool. I think that's kind of the only question that we have gotten. So if that's it, then we'll probably just leave it at that. As mentioned, we have a blog post that we just put out on the spaces here, and we'll have it on Twitter as well. Please do check it out. It has a step-by-step guide with a video sharing, screen sharing of Bojan as well, which shows you exact steps that you need to take. And thank you guys for joining the spaces today. Thank you, Edi. Thank you, Bojan. It's been a pleasure. And thank you to the audience as well. Do definitely check out Liquity on Starknet. And yeah, borrow at cheap gas fees.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the feedback from the users. Yeah, let the Christmas campaign begin. Bye-bye.
Sounds good, guys. Bye-bye.